Hello, welcome to a complete care and propagation guide of the Monstera Adansonii. So, in my typical planty vocab style, I'm going to give you a few key vocabulary words for how to describe this plant. So, the leaves are ovate, and that means egg-shaped. The bottom, so the leaf base, is caudate. So, where the leaf meets the petiole being the stem that attaches the leaf to the rest of the plant. Where that stem meets, you can see that it's kind of a heart-shaped, and that is caudate. The margin is entire, so unlike the Monstera deliciosa, the holes in the leaf do not extend to the edge. They are only within the leaf. And the very tip of the leaf is an attenuate tip. So that means that it is pointed for water droplets to come off. And this is very useful for where the plant originates, in the rainforest. So the main thing about this leaf that attracts everyone to it is the fenestrations. So fenestrations just mean windows, and they're a naturally formed hole where an area of tissue stops growing and disintegrates early in development. On the Monstera Adansonii, they're not symmetrical, and they never pass the midriff, which is the central vein of the plant. This plant grows from the petiole of the youngest leaf. It comes out as a small roll, and over the course of about a week to 2 weeks, it unrolls and expands and gets bigger. The roots are pale, thin, and fibrous. If they're brown and squishy, that is a sign of root rot. So, on to the next part, the care requirements. And this plant loves to grow on a pole. So, how you grow it on a pole is that you place the pole in the substrate, then you bring the vine to the pole, and you attach the vine to the pole with the adventitious roots facing the pole. An adventitious root is a root that grows somewhere that's not in the ground. You bind the vine to the pole loosely, not too tight. You don't want to cut off circulation. If you don't let your plant grow on a pole, what can happen is that the leaves over time become small, and the internode, so the space between each set of leaves, becomes bigger and bigger. So for the Monstera Adansonii, it prefers bright indirect light. So we're talking a screened south window, or preferably an east or west window if you're in the northern hemisphere. If you're giving it too much light, the leaves will become scorched. They'll have some brown edges or splotches, and that's usually a sign of too much direct sunlight. And if you are growing it on a pole, but the leaves are still coming out really small and there's a lot of space between the interlodes, that is a sign of not enough light. So water. In the winter, stick your finger into the soil at least 2 inches, and if your finger comes out dry, water it thoroughly until it runs out of the bottom of the drainage holes. This plant does need drainage holes. And in the spring, summer, and early autumn, stick your finger 1 inch into the soil, and if you take your finger out and it's cold, wet, and particles of soil are sticking to your finger, leave it. However, if it's dry, same thing as in the winter, water it thoroughly until it comes out of the drainage holes. Now, for visual cues, this plant does give some visual cues. So if the leaves become pale and yellowish and the whole plant looks like it's drooping over and looks a bit depressed, that means that it's probably time for you to check on the watering. If you don't want to put your finger in the soil, you can also check with a chopstick. So fertilization, I do liquid feed for all of my plants, and I feed them in the spring and summer seasons. The Monstera Adansonii needs a well-balanced fertilizer. So that means equal ratio of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Reduce the dosage directed on the bottle by half and do this bi-weekly. So that means every 2 weeks. Pests. So pest pressures are something no one wants to deal with, but with houseplants, sometimes you get some pests. In my personal experience, I've dealt with thrifts on my Monstera Adansonii, but other people have also dealt with mealybugs. Both of these can be eradicated with neem oil, and I have a video on my channel detailing how to do this. That one was in particular about aphids, but it applies to all of them. Pruning. So this plant responds quite well to pruning. For old and dying foliage, wait until it turns very yellow and gently peel it off. But for pruning new growth, you can prune it and then propagate. So for propagation, pick the part of the plant you want to prune. I picked here because it has long interlodes. Now, pruning forces the auxin, which is a plant growth hormone that normally lives at the tip of the plant, to rush back down the plant and then grow from other parts. So pruning makes your plant more bushy. Firstly, get a sharp pair of scissors and disinfect them with isopropyl alcohol. Pick the part you want to cut and cut at least 1 inch away from the adventitious root, which is where the node is. Next, get some clean water and dip the stem in the water. This gets it wet. Then, dip it in the rooting hormone and add some rooting hormone to the water. Rooting hormone is not essential, but I really like using it because it helps the roots to grow in quicker and also healthier in my experience, but it's nowhere near essential. Once you've done this, it's just a waiting game. Once a week, you want to tip the water out and replace it with fresh, clean water until you get about 1.5 inches of root growth. So, for the soil mix, you want to have 3 parts coco coir, 1.5 parts orchid bark, and 1 part perlite. The soil mix that you want for a Monstera Adansonii is going to be quite a chunky, well-draining mix. You can use this mix for both propagations like I am now, or if it comes to the point where your plant needs to be repotted, you can use the same type of mix. Monstera Adansonii grow really quite fast with the right condition, so you will need to repot about once a year. And when you do repot, you want to do it in the spring and summer, the growing seasons. Put some of the soil mix into a clean, disinfected pot. Place the propagations in the soil and then cover with more soil. I water the propagation with the water they were standing in. This is because it still has some rooting hormone in it, and it really does help it adjust to the soil. With water propagations, it can be quite a bit of a shock moving it from a water only environment to a soil environment. So my top tip for that is to keep the soil very moist for 2 weeks. And after about 2 weeks, it would have had the time to adjust to being within soil and you can treat it like normal. Thank you so much for watching this video on the Monstera Adansonii care and propagation. I hope that it was helpful. If it was, click the like button and subscribe for more content. And have a wonderful day. I hope you and your plants grow well. Bye!